Defiance stood in the center of the grand bedroom, her delicate gown shimmering under the lights, but her face was pale, eyes hollow, rage boiling inside her like a volcano waiting to erupt. Her stepmother's cruel words echoed mercilessly in her head. I really pity you as a human, but as a woman I hate you. I see your mother in your face. Today you snatched my daughter's happiness just like your mother snatched mine. As much as I hate seeing my daughter in pain, I want you to marry Taehyung because this is the only way to get you out of my sight. I don't want you near us. I don't want my daughter to spend her life like me. One's hands trembled as she looked around the lavish room. It was beautiful, magnificent even, but it felt like a prison. Her chest tightened, her heart pounding with a suffocating ache. She could still see the cold disdain in her stepmother's eyes, the hate in her uncle, aunt, and grandmother's eyes. Wine's nails dug into her palms until she felt pain, the only thing grounding her to reality. Her vision blurred with tears of frustration and helplessness. Her hate for Taehyung doubled. She stormed toward the vanity, her reflection taunting her, looking just like the woman who ruined her stepmother's life. I see your mother in your face. With a choked scream, she grabbed the perfume bottles and threw them at the mirror. They shattered upon impact, glass splintering across the floor, the scent of luxury mixing with the bitterness in her heart. The reflection cracked, her face distorted, her rage intensified. She reached for the vases, the jewelry box, anything within her grasp, hurling them at the mirror, at herself, at her faith. A heavy showcase caught her eye. She gripped it tightly, her muscles straining as she threw it with all her might. It crashed against the mirror, the force shaking the wall. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces, raining down like glittering shards of pain. Just then the door burst open. Taehyung stood there, his eyes wide with shock as he took in the wreckage. The broken glass, shattered decorations, and wine in her wedding gown, breathing heavily like a trapped animal. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red with fury. What happened? He asked, his voice low but laced with concern. One's head snapped toward him, her gaze burning with loathing. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the bedside table, her movement sharp and violent, her fingers closed around a heavy candle. Her grip tightened, her knuckles turning white as she hurled it at him. But he dodged it. His eyes widened. "Wine, what are you doing?" he shouted, rushing toward her. Wine yelled at him, "This is what you get for bringing me into your life." Her voice was hoarse, raw with pain and anger. But she didn't stop. Her body moved on its own, driven by a rage she couldn't control. She grabbed another candle, her expression vacant yet as she threw it on the bed. The fire spread rapidly, devouring the fabric, turning the bed into blaze. She lit another candle and threw it at the carpet. The flames spread, climbing up the curtains, engulfing the room in smoke and heat. Wine stopped, Taehyung yelled, running towards her. Her veil caught fire from behind, flames dancing dangerously close to her hair. Panic flashed in his eyes. He lunged at her, his hand slapping the flames to quench them. "Are you insane?" he shouted, his voice cracking with urgency. Wine's body went rigid, her head snapping toward him as she yelled back, "Yes, I'm insane." Outside, the commotion grew as servants shouted, alarms blaring. Taehyung's eyes filled with pain, but he didn't stop. He tapped the fire with his bare hands, his skin burning, the smell of scorched flesh mixing with smoke. Finally, the flames on her veil died down. Ignoring his own pain, Taehyung grabbed her wrist, his grip firm but careful. "We have to get out of here," he was dragging her towards the door. Wine struggled, her body resisting, but she was too exhausted, too broken. She let him pull her out of the burning room, her feet stumbling over shattered glasses. The servants rushed past them with fire extinguishers, spraying the flames as smoke filled the corridor. His parents appeared, panic acted on their faces. "Taehyung, what happened? How did the room catch fire?" his father demanded, his tone sharp, suspicious. Wine staggered, feeling a wave of dizziness. She wrenched her wrist from Taehyung's grip harshly, almost pushing him, collapsing on the couch in the hallway. Her shoulders slumped, her head falling onto the armrest. She felt hollow, her anger burned out, leaving only despair. Taehyung's mother stared at her, her lips curling with disdain. "What is this behavior?" she muttered, her voice dripping with contempt. Taehyung sighed, his shoulders tense. She might be scared," he said softly, his eyes flicking to Wine, his expression unreadable. His parents exchanged wary glances, but they didn't argue. Taehyung turned away, joining the servants to help put out the fire. When he returned, His mother gasped, rushing to his side. Taehyung, your wrist, your hand, it's burned. Her voice trembled with worry. Taehyung glanced down at his blistered, reddened skin. His fingers were raw, the pain sharp and searing. He brushed it off. It's nothing, Mom, he muttered, his voice flat. He walked to Wan, who was still lying on the couch, her face pale, eyes staring blankly at the floor. He kneeled beside her, his voice softening. Are you okay? His gaze searched for any signs of injury. She looked at him, her eyes dull, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came out, only cold silence. His father's voice cut through the tension. Taehyung, how did the room catch fire? Taehyung's jaw clenched. He looked at his parents and back at Wan. Their eyes met, her expression cold and unyielding. He took a breath, his voice steady as he lied. The candle fell mistakenly from me on the bed. Wan's eyes widened, surprise flicking across her face. She hadn't expected him to lie. She thought he would say the truth and his parents will be disappointed with his choice of choosing her over 𝐊𝐿𝐿𝐬. They will scold him, insult him just like her family did, but he lied for her. For her. Never did anyone do anything for her, and someone doing something for her felt strange. His parents exchanged confused glances before his father sighed. We'll prepare another room for you both. Taehyung noted, his face calm despite the chaos around them. I'll look over the servants, he said, rising to his feet. He glanced at Wan one last time, his eyes lingering with a softness she didn't understand before walking away. Alone on the couch, Wan leaned back, her body sinking into the cushions. Her head rested on the armrest, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Her chest felt heavy, her mind numb. He lied for me. No one had ever protected her, cared for her, stood by her side. It felt strange, unfamiliar, almost painful. As the servants cleaned the ashes of her fury, Wan remained motionless, her heart aching with a hollow emptiness she couldn't escape. Taehyung stood in the hallway, his eyes fixed on the half-open door of Wan's room. It had been days since the fire incident, and she hadn't allowed him to step inside her room since. Every time he tried, she would shut the door in his face, her eyes void of emotion. No matter how hard he tried, she remained locked away, refusing to come out. Mr. and Mrs. Kim noticed the distance between them, often exchanging concerned glances. Wan stayed cooped up in her room, feeling suffocated by her own thoughts. Now her phone rang incessantly. It was 𝐊𝐿𝐬 again. Wan stared at the screen as her stepsister's name flashed, the device vibrating angrily on the nightstand. She hesitated but picked up, bringing the phone to her ear. 𝐊𝐿𝐬's voice came through, broken and venomous. You homewrecker, how could you? You knew Taehyung was mine, yet you married him. You stole him just like your mother stole my father. Her voice cracked with pain and hatred. I hate you, Wan, I curse you. I hope you live a miserable life just like your mother deserved. Wan felt her heart shattered as 𝐊𝐿𝐬's words echoed in her ears. She didn't have the strength to argue back. She let the tears silently roll down her cheeks as 𝐊𝐿𝐬 continued to hurl insults, her voice dripping with resentment. You don't deserve happiness, you don't deserve love. You ruined my life, Wan, just like your mother ruined my mom's. 𝐊𝐿𝐬's tones were loud before she finally hung up, leaving Wan with deafening silence. Her phone rang again, and this time it was her grandmother. She felt a pang in her chest as she picked up, knowing what was coming. You wretched girl. Her grandmother's voice was cold and filled with contempt. You ruined your sister's life. How dare you stand in that wedding gown? Do you think Taehyung loves you? He only married you out of pity. You are a curse, Wan. A curse I regret taking under my roof. Wan's hands trembled as she held the phone to her ear, her knees buckling beneath her. Her grandmother's words hit her like daggers, each one more piercing than the last. You should have died with your mother. You should have. Wan couldn't bear it anymore and ended the call. The phone slipped from her fingers, falling to the floor as she sank on the bed. Her heart felt heavy and her chest tightened, struggling to breathe. She glanced at the nightstand and saw the bottle of sleeping pills. Her vision blurred as she picked it up, twisting off the cap and pouring all the pills into her trembling palm. The white tablets filled her hand, cold and heartless. Her gaze remained fixed on them, her mind replaying 𝐊𝐿𝐬's and her grandmother's words over and over. Let's end it all at once, she whispered, her voice hollow. Her fingers shook as she brought her hand closer to her mouth, her eyes vacant and lifeless. Just as she was about to swallow them, The door burst open and Taehyung stood at the threshold, his face aged with worry. His eyes widened when he saw the bottle of pills on the bed and a handful in her palm. He rushed to her, his voice trembling. "Mine, what are you doing?" She clenched her jaw, refusing to look at him, and moved her hand closer to her mouth. But Taehyung was faster. He grabbed her wrist, his grip firm yet gentle. "No, stop it," he shouted, his voice breaking. "Leave me," she yelled, struggling to free herself from his hold. Taehyung didn't let go. With one swift motion, he pried her fingers open and pills scattered across the floor. He then cupped her shoulders, his eyes blazing with fear and anger. "What are you doing? Are you out of your mind?" "Yes, I'm insane," she screamed, her voice cracking as she began to hit his chest with her fist over and over again. "Why did you marry me? Why did you bring disaster to my already shattered life? I hate you. I hate everyone." Her hips were weak, her body trembling with exhaustion, but Taehyung let her vent. He stood still, allowing her to release her pain. He poured down her face as she kept screaming, her words filled with agony. "Because of you, they forced me to marry you. I hate you. You made them look down on me even more. I hate you so much." His heart clenched painfully as he heard her cries. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly as she struggled to break free. "I didn't know they would force you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I just wanted to marry you. I have liked you ever since I first set my eyes on you." Wine froze her body, going rigid in his embrace. She pulled back and looked up at him, her eyes bloodshot and swollen. "You like me?" Her heart skipped a beat, but she quickly suppressed it, letting out a bitter chuckle. "Do you think after knowing my truth you'll still like me?" Her voice shook as she laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a stripper's daughter. My mother was a stripper who seduced my dad and ruined Claudia's mother's wife. I'm a cursed child." Taehyung stared at her, his face expressionless as he absorbed her words. Ryan waited for him to react, to recall him disgust, to walk away, or to insult her like everyone else did, but he did none of that. Instead, he took a step closer, gently taking her hands in his. "That was your mother, not you. I don't care whose daughter you are. All that matters to me is that you are my wife, my love." His words were soft, filled with affection and sincerity. Ryan's eyes widened, her heart racing as she stared at him in disbelief. No one had ever said such words to her. Her chest felt heavy, a strange warmth spreading inside her. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "Stop lying. I won't fall for your lies. You're just like others." Taehyung's eyes softened, his hold on her tightening as he tried to bring her closer. "While I mean it. I don't care about your past. I care about you here now." Her heart ached, her body giving up as she went limp in his arms. Taehyung's eyes widened in panic, gently patting her cheek. Why? She didn't respond, her eyes fluttering shut as she fell unconscious. His heart dropped to his stomach and he carefully laid her on the bed, brushing her hair away from her face. His fingers trembled as he pulled out his phone, immediately calling for a doctor. Taehyung sat beside her, his burnt hands aching as he gently held hers. Soon the doctor arrived. He stood up after examining Wine, his expression serious as he faced Taehyung. "She's under immense stress and is showing clear signs of depression," the doctor informed. "She needs a peaceful environment, away from any negative influences that might trigger her emotions. It's crucial to keep her mind distracted from any worries." Taehyung's heart sank, his eyes lingering on Wine's pale face as she lay motionless on the bed. He took a deep breath, his jaw clenching as he listened intently to the doctor's advice. After the doctor left, Taehyung sat by Wine's side for a long time until the maid came and informed him that his parents is calling him to their room. Taehyung hesitated, his gaze fixed on Wine's fragile form. He wanted to stay by her side, terrified of what she might do if left alone. Reluctantly, he got up and told two maids to stay by her side before going to his parents' room. Entering his parents' room, he stood with his arms crossed, his stance defensive. His parents exchanged glances before Mr. Kim's voice sliced through the tension. "What happened to her?" Taehyung shrugged, his voice even. "She's not used to living here, so..." "Don't lie," Mr. Kim snapped, his eyes narrowing. "We heard her screaming. Something is clearly wrong." Mrs. Kim folded her arms, her face grim. "We contacted her grandmother. She told us everything about Wine's mother. She was a stripper thing. We always wanted Claudia to be your wife, not Wine. Wine is rude, disrespectful. She ignores us as if we don't exist." Taehyung tightened his hands, forming fists at his sides. Meanwhile, outside the room, Wine froze her hand mid-air, about to push the door open. She had stormed out of her room, anger boiling inside her because Taehyung had assigned maids to keep an eye on her. But the conversation she overheard made her feet feel like they were glued to the floor. Taehyung sighed heavily, his voice serious yet affectionate. Mom, that's Wine's way of defending herself. She's been hurt all her life. She's built walls around herself to protect her heart from more pain. But she'll come around if you give her love and importance. Mr. King's face turned red with anger. What about her mother? A stripper who ruined the woman's life. You want people to mock our family because of that, to laugh at us. You must leave her with him. Taehyung's eyes blazed with determination as he took a step forward. I don't care whose daughter she is. None of that matters to me. I love her. I love her for who she is, not for where she came from. And I won't leave her for anyone or anything. Mrs. King's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes reflecting was frustration. I can't accept her as my daughter-in-law, Taehyung. I already regretted fixing Claudia. Leave her. Taehyung's voice turned cold as ice. Dream on, I will never leave her. His father's fist slammed onto the desk, his voice echoing through the room. Leave her or leave us, you can't have both. Taehyung stood motionless, his face a mask of disbelief. His parents looked at him expectantly, sure that he would choose his family and their wealth over Wine. After all, the company meant everything to him, didn't it? A bitter smile danced on Wine's lips as she leaned against the wall outside, her heart shattering into pieces. Of course he would leave her. Who would choose her over a life of luxury and a loving family? But Taehyung's next words made her freeze. Fine, he said, his voice steady and unwavering. I'll leave this house in your company. I don't need any of it if it means giving up on Wine. His words echoed in the room like a thunderclap. Mr. and Mrs. King's face paled, their eyes widening in shock. They had never thought Taehyung would defy them for Wine. Yet he stood firm, his eyes blazing with resolve. Without another word, Taehyung turned on his heel and stormed out. Wine barely had time to react before she quickly rushed back to her room, her heart thudding wildly in her chest. She collapsed onto the bed, her mind swirling with emotions she couldn't understand. Why would he give up everything for her? Why would he defend her even after knowing truth about her mother? Time skip. Taehyung drove Wine to his apartment without uttering a word. Ever since they had returned, Taehyung had been attending calls one after another, his voice calm but detached, as if his mind was elsewhere. Wine sat on the bed, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, chin resting atop them. Her eyes stared at nothing in particular, lost in a whirlpool of thoughts that she wished she could escape from. When Taehyung finally entered the room, his gaze fell on her, and for a moment his breath hitched. She looked so fragile, so heartbreakingly beautiful with her innocent face lost in melancholy. He swallowed, his chest tightening at the sight of her curled up on the bed like a wounded bird. Without a word, he approached her and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Wine turned to look at him just as he opened his mouth to speak, but her soft voice cut through the silence first. You didn't have to do this. Her voice was low, almost trembling, as if she had been holding the words in for too long. Taehyung frowned slightly, passing her a questioning look. Wine hesitated before continuing. I overheard your argument with your parents. She dropped her gaze, her fingers tightening around her knees. You should have agreed to what they said. I'm not worth it, Taehyung. Sooner or later you'll regret it. His heart clenched at her words, and he immediately took her hand in his. His touch firm yet gentle. I will never regret it, he said, his voice steady with conviction. But Wine pulled her hand away only to take his instead, staring at the bandages wrapped around his fingers. Her brows furrowed as she traced the white gauze with her fingertips. Why did you do it? She whispered. You ruined your life by choosing me because every moment with me will wound you thin. It will leave scars. He let out a small chuckle, but there was nothing amused about it. I did it because it was about you, Wine. He tilted his head, his eyes softening as he continued. As long as you are by my side, I am willing to take any wounds. Wine bit her lip, her chest tightening at his words. No one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever wanted her this much. Before she could say anything, Taehyung lifted her hand to his lips, placing a soft lingering kiss against her cold skin. Please, Wine, he murmured against her knuckles. Give me a chance. Trust me just once. Lean on me, let me take all your sorrows. Her heart pounded at the sight of the most beautiful man before her, his dark eyes filled with nothing but sincerity. He was at the point of pleading. Did she deserve this? Did she deserve him? She remained silent and then, sensing her hesitation, sighed before reaching for the medicine on the nightstand. He handed her a tablet along with a glass of water. Take this. In a daze, Wan swallowed it without question, but as she handed the glass back, realization hit her. What was that for? She asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Taehyung tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek before he murmured, "It's to help you sleep. You haven't had a good sleep in days." Wan nodded slowly, though Taehyung's thoughts were far darker. "I can't leave you alone while you're sober. What if you try again?" He exhaled softly, brushing his thumb over her temple before whispering, "I have some work to do. You should sleep until I return." Wan's heart swelled as he gently urged her to lie down, tucking her in as if she were the most precious thing in his world. He adjusted the blanket over her, his touches delicate, and she felt something in her heart crack at the tenderness he offered so effortlessly. "Should I read you a book?" he asked, his voice softer than ever. Her lips parted slightly in surprise before she gave the smallest nod. A memory flashed before her eyes of her stepmother tugging Lodia in at night, reading her bedtime stories. How badly she had wanted someone to do the same for her. Tim opened the book and began reading, his deep voice filling the room in a soothing melody. Wan, however, found herself unable to look away from him. Her eyelids grew heavy, but before sleep could take her completely, she reached for his bandaged hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Then stilled his eyes, meeting hers as she slowly brought his hand to her lips and pressed a soft kiss against the wrapped wounds. "Thank you," she whispered before resting his palm against her cheek, her warmth seeping into his skin. He swallowed hard, his entire being drowning in the moment. He leaned down, pressing a long, lingering kiss to her forehead. His voice faltered as he hesitated, watching her eyes flutter shut. He sighed against her skin, his lips ghosting over her forehead one last time before he murmured against her soft hair, "I love you, Wan." "Thanks." Ken sat on the bed, leaning against the headboard, his gaze fixed on his laptop as his fingers glided over the keyboard. His expression was calm, focused, but a soft warmth lingered in his features even as he worked. Wan stepped out of the washroom, dabbing a towel against her damp face. She moved towards the balcony, hanging the towel before slipping into bed beside him. He glanced at her, and a gentle smile stretched across his lips, so warm, so inviting. It made her heart skip a beat. Without a word, he closed his laptop, setting it aside. Before he could say anything, Wan suddenly laid her head on his lap, catching him off guard. She had never approached him on her own like this before. Blinking in surprise, he leaned slightly towards her, his right hand finding its way into her hair, caressing it while his left thumb traced her jawline with slow, soothing strokes. "What happened?" he asked softly. Wan stared at him for a moment, then took the hand that was stroking her jaw into her own, her voice barely a whisper. "Can I not go to therapy today? I'm fine." His fingers paused. "Why?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. "Did something happen?" She shook her head reluctantly. "Nothing happened, but it makes me feel like I'm sick in the head." Sam leaned down, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. "You're not sick," he murmured. She swiftly shook her head. "The doctor just wants to know about my past, right? I'll tell it to you. You don't have to force yourself on," he assured her. "Only when you're ready." Her eyes glistened, her voice trembling. "I want to let it out, just once." She averted her gaze, but Sam wasn't going to let her shy away. He cupped her face gently and pressed a soft kiss to each of her eyelids. Wan remained silent. "Why is your father bedridden?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She sniffled, her lips quivering. "My mom died when I was 5 years old, and Dad loved her a lot. He couldn't accept that she was gone, so he drowned himself in alcohol, leaving me with his family." Her voice cried, but she continued. "One day he was drunk and got into an accident. Since then he's been like this." He gently pulled her up, cradling her against his chest, his arms strong and secure around her as she continued. "Dad did wrong to Lodia's mother, but she never abused me physically like Grandma, Uncle, and Lodia did. But she did verbally." His grip on her tightened as she sobbed into his chest. He rubbed slow, soothing circles on her back, his heart aching at her pain. "I dropped out of high school because Lodia told everyone my mother was a stripper," she whispered brokenly. Everyone stayed away from me, bullied me, called me the daughter of a slut. I was bullied to the point that I tried to end my life, but Claudia's mother saved me. Then it became a part of my routine to harm myself. Her words cut through him like a blade. His grip on her tightened as he hushed her, his voice thick with emotion. One stopped it on her to say more. She sobbed harder. I hate my parents for leaving me in misery. Only if they hadn't. Then tilted her chin, making her look at him. When she refused, he wiped her tears away, his voice firm yet so full of love. You are made for me, Wayne. We just met late. She sniffed, staring at him. Taehyung, will you always remain like this? This feels like a dream. Am I worth it? What if you get tired of me and my misery? That day would be the death of me. His heart clenched, and he hushed her, his lips brushing against her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, every soft reassurance he could give her. I'll never get tired of you. Not in this lifetime, not in any lifetime, Wayne. You are worth everything to me. She took his hand in hers, staring at the burn scar on his palm. You're hurt because of me. Your parents disowned you because of me. You're struggling financially because of me. He caught her wrist, pulling it to his lips and kissing her palm. Everything I did was for you, and I would do it all over again if it meant having you by my side. He reached for the medicine on the nightstand, offering it to her. She hesitated, shaking her head. I sleep all day ever since I started taking this. This will keep your mind at peace, he coaxed. Just a few more days and you won't have to take it anymore. Even if the doctor prescribes it again, I won't make you. She hesitated but eventually took it. As soon as she swallowed it, he cradled her against his chest, pressing a lingering kiss to her temple. He didn't let go, not even as her breath softened, her body relaxing into his hold. He stared at her sleeping face, brushing his fingers over her cheek, tugging a strand of hair behind her ear. You're my everything, Wayne, he whispered. Few days later, Wayne was happier than she had ever been in her life. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in love, to trust him with her fragile heart. He cherished her as if she were the most precious treasure in his world. Every moment with him was like a beautiful dream, one she never wanted to wake up from. But her happiness never lasted long in her life. As she sat on the couch, her phone rang. An unknown number. Hesitant, she answered, only for her blood to run cold at the voices at the other end. You disgusting little Gen X. Gloria's voice was filled with venom. How dare you think you deserve happiness? One stiffened, her fingers gripping the phone tightly. Claudia, you ruined everything. Her grandmother's voice screeched through the phone. You think he cherishes you, loves you. He's suffering because of you. You have cursed his life just like your mother did to my son. Her breath hissed. No, that's not true. It is Claudia's bad. He works day and night, barely sleeping, struggling financially because of you. He's been disowned by his family, and for what? For a worthless, miserable thing like you. You don't deserve him, Wayne. You don't deserve happiness. Tears blurred her vision as their cruel words wrapped around her throat like a noose. Stop, please. You're a Gen X. Her grandmother hissed. A curse wherever you go, misery follows. The sooner you disappear, the better for everyone. The call ended with their words echoing her mind louder than anything else. Her hands trembled as she dropped the phone. Her breath came in sharp, raised gasps. Her gaze landed on the vanity. In a trance, she swept everything off it. The sound of glass shattering filling the air. She clutched her hair, muttering, I'm a Gen X. I ruined everything. I shouldn't be happy. Then her eyes fell on the broken piece of glass. Without thinking, she picked it up. Her vision clouded by pain and dragged it across her wrist. A sharp stink, then warmth, then crimson flowing freely down her skin. The weight tilted her body, swaying as darkness crept into her vision. Soon she lost her consciousness. Hours later, Taehyung arrived home. He wanted to see Wayne as soon as possible, but just as he opened the door to their shared bedroom, his heart stopped the moment he saw her on the floor, blood pooling around her wrist. Wayne, his voice cracked, panic gripping him as he rushed to her side, gathering her in his arms. Wayne, he called her out. Her body was cold, her breath weak. Then, didn't waste a second, he lifted her into his arms. His mind clouded with terror as he ran to the car speeding toward the hospital. His hands were shaking, his heart racing. Hours later, the doctor finally stepped out of the emergency room. She's out of danger. We were able to stop the bleeding in time. Taehyung's knees almost gave out as relief flooded his body. He didn't even realize tears were rolling down his cheeks. When he was allowed inside, he walked in with trembling steps. While lying on the hospital bed, her face pale, her wrist bandaged. He sat beside her, holding her hand tightly as if she would slip away if he let go. Moments later, she blinked, her lashes fluttering weakly. Her eyes met his. And the first thing she saw was the tears spilling down his face. Her heart ached. Taehyung, the strangled sob left his lips as he leaned forward, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Don't ever do this again, Wine, please," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I was so scared, I almost lost you. Do you know what that would do to me?" Wine's tears welled up, guilt washing over her like a tidal wave. She had hurt him. "I'm sorry. Don't say that." His arms tightened around her, his face buried in her hair. "Just don't do this again. I need you. I can't live without you. You're my happiness, my world. If you leave me, there will be nothing left of me." Her lips trembled as she clutched onto his shirt. I thought I was ruining your life. I was making you suffer. They told me." Taehyung pulled back slightly, covering her face. Who said that?" She swallowed, her gaze dropping. "Lodi and my grandmother, they called me. They said I was a curse in your life. I don't deserve you. I'll ruin you, just like my mother ruined my father." Taehyung's jaw clenched, rage flickering in his eyes, but he forced himself to stay calm for her. He pressed his forehead against hers, his voice gentle but firm. "Don't listen to them, ever. You're not a curse, mine. You're my heart, my love. If I'm suffering, it's because I'm away from you, not because I am with you. You bring light into my life. You make my world worth living." Her lips quivered more, tears slipping down. "But you work so hard. You don't sleep enough because of me." Taehyung shook his head, brushing his thumb over her cheek. "I work hard because I have dreams for us, not because you are a burden. I'll never ever regret choosing you." When he kept her fingers brushing against his damp cheeks. "I don't deserve you. Every time I hurt you." Taehyung let out a shaky breath, pressing a lingering kiss to her forehead. "You deserve everything good in this world, and I'll spend my entire life proving that to you." His lips moved to her eyes, kissing away the remaining tears before resting against her lips, barely touching. "Don't scare me like this again, love. Promise me." Mine swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded. "I promise." Taehyung exhaled in relief, pressing another soft kiss to her lips before pulling her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Mine closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Few weeks later, Wine had been recovering under Taehyung's watchful eyes. He had been taking care of her more than ever before. When Taehyung arrived home, his shoulders heavy with exhaustion, Wine was in the living room, her face lighting up as she saw him. "You're home," she greeted him with a bright smile. Taehyung hummed in response, offering a small nod before walking straight to the bedroom, his grumpy mood evident. Wine tilted her head, curiosity sparkling in her eyes as she followed him. "Why are you grumpy again?" she asked, stepping into the room. Taehyung turned to face her with a raised brow, and Wine gasped dramatically. "You're sulking," she teased, biting back a giggle. Placing both hands on his hips, Taehyung nodded. "Yes, I am. So what?" Wine looked at him innocently, fidgeting with her fingers. "I didn't do anything." He stepped closer, his sharp gaze softening as he unbuttoned his shirt. "You cooked," he sniffed the air. "I can smell it." Wine blinked at him, clearing her throat. "Cooking is not a big deal." Taehyung sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I told you to stay away from the kitchen. It's dangerous." Wine chuckled, shaking her head. "The kitchen is not. Trust me for once." As she spoke, her gaze flickered to his bare chest, her throat suddenly dry. "I think you are dangerous right now," she muttered. "So please don't come close and change in the washroom." His lips curled mischievously. "Now that's interesting." Wine's eyes widened as Taehyung took a step closer. Without hesitation, she turned on her heel and bolted. Laughter echoed through the room as Taehyung chased her, his playful voice filling the space. "You're not escaping me, Wine." After a few turns around the room, Taehyung caught her, his strong arms wrapping around her waist as they tumbled onto the bed. Their breaths were heavy, their chests rising and falling in sync. Taehyung leaned down, burying his face in the crook of her neck. Inhaling her sweet scent, 𝐊𝐚𝐫𝐽 scolded me slightly. It's ticklish. He smiled against her skin before playfully biting her, earning a soft gasp. Then his lips traced over her jaw and neck, leaving slow, deliberate kisses that sent shivers down her spine. Taehyung tried to distract him, her voice breathless. When are we going to your parents' house? Mom called again today. Then pulled back slightly and are prolifting. You'll forget me if we go there. One laughed, why would I? He rolled his eyes. The other day when they came, you ignored me completely. Do you remember how you were glued to my mom? Shaking her head with amusement, Maya replied, you're impossible, Taehyung. They came to our house for the first time. Taehyung sulked, even after they told me to leave you. One smiled softly and she glared at him. That's in the past. They apologized, and it was my fault as well. He sighed dramatically. I can't even make you against them. Mine pouted. You're acting like a quarrelsome evil woman. A deep laughter rumbled through his chest as he peppered kisses all over her face, making her giggle again. After a while, he pulled away and gazed at her seriously. Your grandmother is in the hospital. She's got a stroke. Mine's expression fell slightly as she sighed. And 𝐊𝐸𝐽 is in jail. She was caught with drugs. She nodded, her voice quiet. Seems like it's their retribution. He watched her carefully, his fingers caressing her cheek, while lifted her hands and cupped his face, her eyes shining with warmth. Taehyung, he hummed, pressing a soft peck to her lips. She whispered, thank you. Then she leaned in and kissed him deeply, pouring every ounce of love into it. I love you, she murmured against his lips. Taehyung held her tighter, his forehead resting against hers as he whispered back, I love you more, my precious girl. His hands roamed her back gently. You have no idea what you do to me, Wine. His lips trailed over her jawline down to her collarbone, leaving a trail of warmth that made her shiver. She whimpered softly, gripping his shoulders. Taehyung, he smirked, his breath bursting over her skin. Already breathless, she swatted his arm playfully, and he chuckled, pinning her hands above her head. No more running away now, he murmured before capturing her lips in a passionate kiss. Wine melted into him, her body arcing into his as his kisses grew deeper, more demanding. His hands caressed her sides, his warmth seeping through her skin, making her feel treasured adore. He pulled back just enough to gaze into her eyes. You're my everything, Wine, my love, my life, my forever. Tears sprinkled in her eyes at his sincerity, and she pulled him back into her kiss.